right here, right now. Every day, CIUT 89.5, the sound of your city. Toronto.
You're listening to CIUT 89.5 FM, the more the merrier with Donna G. And I thought I would start off the show with that track from Monsoon Wedding, composer Michael Dana, right here in Canada, Hamilton, actually. Because coming up, I'll be speaking to two film composers, Dustin O'Halloran and Hauschka. And they have scored the music for the film Lion, which is screening at the Toronto International Film Festival. So we'll get to hear from them about writing music for the movies. And later on, I'll have two Discovery directors from TIFF, Rasmus Heisterberg, who has a Danish film called In the Blood, screening at TIFF, and Fernando Guzzoni, who has a film called Jesus, which is also screening at the Toronto International Film Festival. And oddly enough, these two films focus on young men, and they have a lot in common. So I look forward to speaking to them about the idea of maleness in their films. So keep it locked to CIUT 89.5 FM. You're listening to CIUT 89.5 FM. This is Donna G. And joining me in studio here at 7 Hart House Circle are composers Hauschka and Dustin O'Halloran. They have scored music for the film Lion, which is screening at the Toronto International Film Festival. Welcome to CIUT, gentlemen.
Thank you so much. Hi.
Hello.
So you both have very fascinating independent careers. Dustin, can you tell me about how you got started in the business?
I started with my band Divix, which was with singer Sarah Love, and we made many records, toured a lot in Europe, and that was really my fundamental beginnings of making music. And then eventually started working on solo piano records, and started getting into my own music, and that just sort of opened up a lot of different paths.
And Hauschka, you're a pianist as well.
Yeah, I am. Well, I was not always. I was beginning more as a kind of keyboard player in bands, and at some point I was, getting more into the indie world, and I was into electronic music, maybe a little bit abstract music, and somehow I found a way of moving from the abstract electronic music into piano and my piano music that I always did, but I never was sure if that is essential for me. And suddenly it was growing and was getting better, so I started releasing, I think, the first record in 2002.
So before the project of Lion, you actually knew each other. So how long have you known each other?
We met in Italy when I was living there. I think it was around 2007.
Yeah.
He was playing a concert in this beautiful town called Ferrara, which is one of my favorite places in Italy. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, because I just released my first piano record," and so he said, "There's this really cool German pianist who's playing. He does prepared piano," and I went up there and we met and had this really nice conversation, and it was one of those moments when you meet people and you immediately know that you're going to be friends, and we've been friends for 10 years, and this is the first time that we really got to collaborate musically, so it was really nice because we've toured together, we've had many meals, many adventures, and then to finally work together at that point was so natural to do it.
Yeah.
Hauschka, can you explain to our audience what prepared piano is?
Well, prepared piano is maybe known for compositions by John Cage. He's maybe one of the most known person that is using prepared piano. It's actually you put material on top of the strings or in between the strings to create a different sound than the piano has. So if you put, for example, bowls or like felt wedges between the strings, suddenly the tone of the note changes into, for example, a plucked bass guitar sound. And so every note you can prepare differently, and suddenly you have this kind of weird mixed instrument that creates a lot of diverse sounds, and it's very percussive.
Dustin, the piece that I just played, Winged Victory for the Sullen, was a piece from an album of yours that somehow was used for the temp track of Lion, is that correct?
Not that one. That's from our first record.
Okay.
The track that they use in Lion is Atomos 7.
Okay.
And this is a project that I'm doing with composer Adam Wiltsey. He has a project called Stars of the Lid that's a kind of drone ambient project. And him and I met actually in Italy around the same time that I met Volker, and we ended up making this first album. And then the second album was a commission for Wayne McGregor. He's a choreographer from the UK. And Garth Davis, the director of Lion, used this piece as sort of one of the themes in the film. And it was one of those pieces of music that immediately I told him, I said, look, there's no way that I'm going to be able to beat this or capture this again, because it's such a specific piece of music. And he ended up keeping it for the film, which works really well with the score that Volker and I made. It's all incorporated, and even though it's me still, so it fits in with what we did. So.
And audience, Volker is also Hauschka, so you might hear the interchange
Right.
of names on air.
Yeah.
Okay.
To me, he's Hauschka. To Dustin, he's Volker. So just so you know where we stand. So how did you actually end up collaborating?
Well,
on this
I
film?
was on tour in Melbourne or in Australia, and I played in Melbourne where Garth Davis is living, and he came to my concert. And he was asking if I would be interested in scoring the film after the concert, because he said that maybe my music would fit very nicely to the first half. And then he mentioned that conversation if I would be interested or if I could imagine to work with Dustin O'Halloran together. And I said, man, if I can imagine to work with someone, then it's him, because it's we know each other, and I know that there's an easy way of working together and communicating. There's no hassle with ego and stuff like that. So I felt like very happy that he was mentioning him rather than somebody else. So, and I said it would be wonderful if that could work. And then from that conversation onwards, I think it took 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and we're in.
Half of making music is just liking the person that you're with. I mean, wanting to spend time with the person you're with, because inevitably you spend a lot of time in a room together when you're making music. And so we love hanging out whenever he's in Berlin or whenever we have time to hang out. We're always spending so much time together. So making music together was just a very natural process. Yeah.
This is a very emotional film. It's based on a true story of Saru Brierley, who, as a young boy, orphaned, lost, more than orphaned, lost at a train station, eventually becomes adopted by an Australian couple, and then uses Google Earth to find his home in India. So the film is set in India, in Australia. So what went through your minds when you're thinking of composing for a film that's set basically in two different countries, different continents?
Well, I think the first thing is actually what goes through your mind is what you don't want to do, I think. And the first thing I think we thought about is that we don't do is to add any kind of folk, like Indian folk music or something like that. There's maybe bringing some strange country aspect into the music. We felt like it's a very modern film because it deals with a quite a topic that everybody's touched by, and everybody has a thought about home, and like the feeling when Saru is just lost in a big city, everybody can cope with. So we felt that we want to do a very modern but touching and maybe not too big score, not too epic in a way, and more sensitive. That was, I think, that was our thoughts in the beginning.
And we were it was nice because we actually had a pretty close to final cut when we started, so it was clear what he wanted to do with the film, and it was clear that the film wasn't about being, a poor kid and going to a middle-class family. There's an element of that, but it was really about family love and how actually that's very equal and very universal, and there always feels it's not even a story about two nationalities. It's really about family and motherly love and the connection that you feel. And so musically it made sense that we're talking about that story and not getting into class or nationality. And so the idea was, in the end, it's an emotional story which is universal.
So how do you work? Do you view the film several times with the dialogue and the sound added and then start working? Do you work piece by piece, chapter by chapter? What's the process?
Well, in this case, we made a kind of spotting session. So the two of us and the director, and I think there was also the producers. We go through the whole film and we make notes which places could work for music, and then you have a list of scenes that and then in a way you start. Well, we divided the film at the beginning in two halves, and I started in the first half and he started with the second, but then we found out that I was jumping into the second half and he was jumping into the first half, because in a way, scenes are connected. Sometimes you feel like, I would love to try this out and maybe that could work for that area. So in a way, the creative process is different than a catalog. You don't go like step by step. Sometimes that's happening. But in this case, we divided it, and then at some point we felt like now it's the time, we have enough material that we can join, and in between we sent it already ideas back and forth. So the exchange was already happening, but at the same time we decided at some point, so now we have to meet in person and work together in the studio for another 4 weeks.
Can you describe the studio setting for me?
Yeah, well, we had two pianos. We had an upright piano and a grand piano, and we mainly were using those to write with. We did a little bit of, we did some prepared piano work with the grand. We used felt piano, which is putting a piece of felt between the hammers and the strings. And then we did a bit of recording on a Steinway at another studio to get a fuller, more bass, richer piano sound. But I wanted to mention there was Garth it was really interesting how he wanted to put musically the film together, because it's two halves, and so there was a lot of things that we sort of had to connect musically, and sonic identities and a little bit of thematic work. But it was the first time that I've done a film like this where we would plant a very small seed of a melody that would come back because there's a lot of flashbacks when he's older and a lot of things that he's remembering, and the story is a lot about recalling these memories that he had. And so we're bringing back pieces of music that sonically identify these memories and sort of building them through the film. And it was nice that we have there's these little elements that we could sort of build thematically through the film.
Yeah, and it's very subtle, because there's no clear leitmotif running through the film. There's just these subtle moments that reference each other. Mm-hmm. And because the direction of the film balances the past with the present so fluidly, the music has to work too. So that must have been a challenge.
Yeah, I think what was the most, when I was watching the movie now at the premiere, I felt very good about the tempo of the music. I mean, we had the music was so pulling back, but the activity in the film was moving, like when he was running, and at the same time the music was always having these long chords. I really loved that. It created in a way a kind of stability in the movie, which I think was helping it a lot. Yeah. So.
And Garth was a great collaborator. Yeah. He had a lot of really great musical ideas. Yeah. There's a solo violin line that happens in the beginning when the boy realizes he's alone on the train. And you don't hear it through the whole film until the first time he opens Google and the first moment when he's starting to think about looking, and he sees the train station, and then you hear this violin again. And Garth, it was sort of his idea to recall this, and it was really smart the way he wanted to bring back these sort of musical motifs to also help the story and the feeling of going back and remembering, and I thought that was a really nice, it was really nice to work with him in that way.
And it must have been so rewarding for you to write music for the young actor who's playing Saru as a boy. His face must have appealed to you.
Incredible.
Oh man,
Yeah.
So good.
sometimes we were unable to write. He's such a touching character.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah, and you get that sense of family love that's just emanating from him. The little brother attached to the older brother, wanting to do everything that the older brother does,
Yeah.
and then the loss when he's sort of away from the family.
I mean, I have a 3.5-year-old boy, and if I imagine him, in 1.5 years, where he's still, kids are fragile at
Yes.
that age. When I imagine him being lost on a train station in Germany, it would tear me apart. I would cry, and of course it would. And so when I see this movie, straight away you totally realize in what kind of situation this boy is, and the real life right now is full of stories like that. That people are, kids are alone, or they travel in Germany. We have a lot of refugee kids that are just arriving from Syria by themselves. So you can imagine, I really felt all these stories in that moment when you see the movie,
So how do you then show them? You have to write music. Dev Patel plays Saru as a man. So how does that change what you write, or does it?
Well, I think that the music becomes, it pulls into more of a shape in the second half. And at the beginning, there's a lot of tension, and you feel like you don't know what's going to happen. I think that Folker's, the way he the music is so inventive, and you never really understand where it's going, really helps the beginning of the film, because you don't know what's going to happen. This boy is lost, and he's just trying to figure things out, and then the second half we start to kind of pull the shapes together a little bit more. It's a little bit more thematic, and obviously he's older. He's had this grown up in a middle class family, and it's a different period of time. So we kind of bring back the first theme that opens the film, and that starts to play a little bit more in the second half. And then there's a sort of spiritual theme that is in both halves, which is the Winged Victory for the Sullen track.
And we have a lot of like piano pieces there that are just clearly only one instrument, and they are. I think these pieces were, I felt at the premiere in the theater, they were so close recorded that I really thought that this was very good, because they, sonically they are different than all the others, because we use a lot of like pads and like longer stretching string notes, but in that period suddenly the piano comes in a very clear way.
Yeah, there's some beautiful strings in this movie, but not the keening, make me feel kind of strings. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's like sometimes strings can have that keening, that I just hate.
It quickly becomes a rich chocolate cake of emotion.
Yes.
And we tried to avoid that as
Yeah,
much as we could. Especially with a movie like this that is so emotional and has great performances. The last thing we want to do is ruin it with a bunch of music that is just, people are going to feel, if you take the music away, if you take the music away, the film is great, and that is a sign of a great performance. And that is such a great place to start when you're making music, that we can just be there, a part of it, but we don't have to create it. It's there.
Right. the music in the film is not obvious,
No.
which is what I love.
But it's also the hard process that because every chord change can make the scene completely
Yeah.
different.
It's very delicate.
Yeah,
It's really delicate.
it's like the music never took me out of the film, which is what I love. It's like, don't jolt me from the story, but complement the
Yeah.
story. And you guys did a brilliant job of that in the film.
We worked. It's funny when you see the film. It's a very restrained, minimal score, but we worked so hard and so long to make it that way. And then when you hear it, people would think, "Well, why did this take you so long?" Because it's just a solo piano and one string. But to figure out that element and how to make it work in the right way, sometimes it's a more delicate process to be restrained.
Right, because you have to respect the silence of the film as well.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned going to the premiere. What was that like for you here?
Oh man, I mean Toronto is such a awesome place. We just said today that it's the city doesn't feel, even though maybe you recognize it, that it's crowded, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels really accommodating, and I think when you are, a full city where nothing is working, where it's hard to get food, and you don't get a taxi, that can stress you out to go to a premiere because you're like everything is like. You're always late, and we had the feeling it was really we were there early. We had time.
Oh, you're lucky because there's so much construction in
Yes.
the city. We're complaining about it, so it's nice to hear the outside perspective that you think things are going smoothly.
Yeah.
Also, we can actually walk everywhere, which is nice.
Yeah.
We've been walking a lot.
Yeah,
I like walking.
And the premiere was great because for us it's a process. We're suddenly celebrating, in a way, finalizing the movie. As everything gets in a way official, and we're wearing a nice suit, and we stand there. I like that a lot.
And it was nice to see all the team of people who worked on the film.
Yeah.
Everybody did such a great job, and that everybody's put so much heart into the film. I mean, everybody gave a lot.
So you actually had the transparent screening. Is it coming up or
It happened yesterday. We
happened
did the
yesterday,
premiere.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, and how was that?
It was great. That we showed the first 3 episodes, and it's a great season. It's really good. And again, it's a project that Jill Soloway, the director, is really visionary with how she wants to create a new way to approach a story for
And
television.
You won an Emmy
Yeah.
for the theme?
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful.
And great actors as
It's
well.
like, I think that's the best looking award. The Emmy.
It's a nice one, and you can also really hurt somebody with it too.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
the sharpest.
It's the sharpest.
In fact, James Franco made like a whole thing about you could kill somebody with it.
Oh, really?
Did a short for the Emmys. It's really funny.
And I've forgotten who's written the music for the James Franco.
Me.
That's you.
Yeah.
That was a nice segue.
Yeah, there you
It's
go.
called A Dubious Battle.
And what's it about?
Well, it's a John Steinbeck novel, and it's about the maybe the beginning of the union of. It's about the apple pickers in California in the late 1930s, where they try to strike against the main land owners and try to get more better salaries, and they the whole story is actually about they organizing a kind of protest against that, and of course there's a lot of killing and trying to not get the people, keep the workers working for $1 a day, and
Yeah.
and it's a very I think the book itself is very complex, and so it was quite a process of squeezing that into a film, but into a 2 hours movie.
How do you not repeat yourself?
Musically?
Yeah.
Well, I think in a way I probably do, but it's a slow progression because I've spent so long to sort of find a sound and identity, and so it's been building on that feeling, and but ultimately I try not to. I try to find things that always are inspiring me, but I also don't want to just do every thing. I don't want to be a musical, jack of all trades either. I like to build on what I've been working on. So for me, it's about going deeper into the path that I want to be, and I'm not going to just go and do any style of music or any style. So,
what about you, Hauschka? How do you not repeat?
Well, first of all, I think we both get a lot of times asked because we have our own records, so a lot of directors are already familiar with the sound. That makes it easier, at least to, bring in your own ideas as well. But at the same time, I think my work is full of avoiding repetition because I'm taping keys dead that I'm normally using with duct tape, or I'm trying to put obstacles in my way, or I'm trying to for example, I did one score for a Brazilian movie called Praia de Futuro, and I avoid to have any piano in the score, for example. Which is not so easy when you're a pianist.
No. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me here today. And it's a wonderful film. And before I went to air, I just got an email saying that Lion has 2 added screenings, Friday night and Saturday afternoon. So www.tiff.net and check the screening times for Lion, Lion. You're listening to CIUT 89.5 FM. This is Donna G. Coming up next, I'll be speaking to 2 directors in the Discovery program at TIFF, Rasmus Heisterberg about his Danish film In the Blood, and Fernando Guzzoni about his film Jesus. Keep it locked to CIUT 89.5 FM. You're listening to The More the Merrier with Donna G. And joining me in studio this time, continued coverage of the Toronto International Film Festival with guests Fernando Guzzoni and Rasmus Heisterberg. Rasmus's film is called In the Blood, Danish film, and Fernando's film is called Jesus, Chilean film playing at TIFF. Gentlemen, welcome to CIUT.
Thank you.
What's your festival experience been like so far? Fernando?
Here in Toronto?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's my first time here, but I'm really glad to be here because it's really important for the film. It's our world premiere here. Then next week we will go to San Sebastian, so it's the best started for the film.
And tell our listeners what your film's about.
It's called Jesus, and it's about, it's basically a father and son broken relationship, and it's a young boy who is looking for his identity, and he's dealing with his life, with his affection, sexuality, basically something like this.
And Rasmus?
Yeah, it's also an identity ride. It's about the last carefree summer in a couple of boys' lives in Copenhagen. When you think that you can still party and chase girls and have fun all the time, and then slowly responsibility and adult life catches up upon the main character.
And you're both in the Discovery section of TIFF. So, Fernando, what was it like when you got that call or that email saying your film was accepted into the festival?
Well, I know one of the programmers of Latin America, Diana Sanchez. Yeah, and she was jury of my previous film in San Sebastian. The premiere also was there. So, and I won with this film. So Diana know really well my films, and so when I finished, I sent her the film, and we discussed for a few months. But when she told me, she confirmed the selection was a great news for us, because it's A-class festival. It's really important, so was just a really happy moment.
And Rasmus, same question to you. What was it like to get that call or that email?
No, it's amazing, and my film is such a small Copenhagen-based film. It's written out of a longing for, and like a love portrait of Copenhagen and the borough that I live in. So it's made me like friends, and it's sort of just this labor of love. So just to have it translate and to be able to show it to an international audience, it's just always such a huge privilege.
I want to talk to right now about your leads. Fernando, tell me about the lead actor in your film. He has a lot to take on in this film. How did you cast him?
Well, I saw more than 400 young boys, non-professional actors, and some of them with some academic background, but in general non-professional. And was really hard, the process, because I was looking for a really specific character. So I found Nicolas just by chance. A friend of mine saw him in a trailer of another film. But after this long process, was more than 4 or 5 months looking for the actor. When I made a casting with him, after 2 minutes, I realized that he was the character. So, and was a great experience because he is a really brave guy and really generous. He really understood my point of view, and so he was a really good partner in the set. And
yeah, watching him, I was wondering, is he an actor? Is he a discovery? Is it his first film? Because he's so natural in the role. But there's so many challenges for him to endure as an actor. There's the carefree beginning of the film, and then it gets more serious towards the middle with some of the things that he does. So how did you work with him? For example, the scene in the park. I don't want to give away too much, but how did you work with him?
Well, we discuss a lot. I used to talk a lot with the actors, and I don't like a lot the rehearsal, but I used to have a really close relation with my actors. So Nicolas understood in the beginning how was my spirit with the film, so he followed me. You know, he has a huge compromise with the film, and he understood that I need these naturalistic scenes, that the film has this documentary spirit. So of course some scenes were quite hard, like some sex scenes or some violent scenes, but he and all the actors had a big compromise with the film, and they understood what was the goal of the film. So at least was not so hard, you know.
And Rasmus, your lead actor, the challenge for him, it would seem to me, would be the sort of restraint that he needs in his face to play the role of Simon, because there are moments when he is depressed and also angry, but not showing the anger overtly. So tell me about casting your lead actor.
Yes, first of all, it was a matter of getting an actor or a couple of, the group of boys I cast it very much as an ensemble, and to feel the chemistry and the friendship between the boys. I really wanted that to be in the fore of the film. And then with Chris, who's playing Simon, it's such an introvert journey for the character, because he's a guy that wants status quo. He wants to preserve everything as it is. So it's like life is changing around him, and he's just slowly realizing that thing from a silent point of view. And I just felt that there was something in Chris's eyes and in his face that really sort of preserved that. It had that vulnerability, and it had a lot of feeling and emotion in his eyes, even though he does destructive things and acts out of desperation. So, to understand his despair and to not be distanced to him was very important for me. So, and I felt that Chris has that the vulnerability was important.
Yeah, and your film definitely showed, the sort of point in life where your university career is sort of ending, and you have to begin again as your own person, and with the characters of the four men sharing this co-op, and then them wanting to sell, and Simon still wanting to hang on to that past that can't happen any longer, because transitions have to happen. what was it like for you? Any personal experience drawn from you to the film?
No, I mean, not in a concrete way. It's much worse for me. No, it's just that I think that it's such a universal theme for me, and this, the feeling of time running as sand through your fingers is just, it's such a frustrating, ongoing pain that we have, existential pain that we have to live with, and I think it burns so strong in those years because you're still sort of searching for your identity, you're searching for a place to settle and to find yourself, and when you realize that, you know, this is not going to be the same summer as the last summer and the summer before that, then you really have to find out who you are, and there's another sense of freedom from, I mean, you can say there's a freedom in the absence of responsibility and the freedom to do whatever you want all the time, but there's another theme of freedom that's about discovering the truth about yourself, and I really wanted to explore the conflict or the transition between these two types of freedom.
Mm-hmm. Rasmus, in your film, In the Blood, Simon comes from a well-to-do family and still is struggling with, as you said, issues of identity. In Fernando, in your film, your character has the same issues where he's acting out badly, trying to suppress a part of himself and trying to be tough, and also he's with a single parent who's trying to instill some values into him. You also wrote the film, so tell me about coming to this point of making Jesus.
For me, the beginning was the idea to reflect about the father and son broken relationship. I think it's a really archetypic subject, you know, and anthropological as well. It's like a big subject. So it was the beginning. I was writing a cold relationship, really like a domestic relationship, and in a hyper male world, you know. And when I was writing in Chile, in Santiago, 4 young boys killed another boy in a public park. Boys around between 18 and 20 something, and all the medias covered the news, and they said that the killers were neo-Nazis and this kind of thing. So just by curiosity, I made a research with all these guys, and I realized that the 4 killers and the victim had an absent father figure. So I connect some elements of this real event with my original story, and I build this reflection about the crisis of the affection, of the relationships, the crisis of these young boys, you know. So it was like the first impulse of the script.
Mm-hmm. Your film took me to places I didn't expect. I love how you set up the urban aspect of the film with scenes around Santiago and also the casual language that you use. But then you take us away from the city into this forested area. Can you tell me about that area?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's in the south of Chile, and it's a contrast in the film because I made, as you said, the first part with really urban look. But this first part represents also this idea of alienation of the characters, like they are really into the city, and suddenly when everything is, when the characters are in a huge crisis, they need to go really far. So the nature is also like a claustrophobic scenario, you know. It's like, so even if you could be in the city or you could be in the middle of the nature, but if you are in a huge crisis or you cannot save your life, it's the same sensation, you know. So for me was this analogy, like the character is isolated, you know.
And Rasmus, in your film, were there any challenges to shooting outdoors? Because you show a lot of Copenhagen. So any challenges for you in shooting in the city?
I mean, no, not really. I think that we worked with a quite flexible crew, and I tried to downscale the crew as much as possible in order to be able to get the vibe and the feeling of the streets and the different places in Copenhagen. No, I think more often it was an advantage to do it like that and to shoot it more in a naturalistic documentary style way, so you get the truthfulness and the sort of the people on the street and everything, instead of having to build it where it's always sort of difficult to obtain that same feeling. Yeah.
The loft where the boys live, did you know somebody who owned it, or how did you get that property, or was it a set?
Oh, it's not a set. Everything is shot on location in apartments and cafes in the streets, and this was just an apartment in the outskirts of Copenhagen that was empty, but kind of used for photo shoots and stuff like that. So it was this run-down, big old apartment, and we just sort of, we actually dressed it with a lot of my furniture, and then we just started shooting. So it was a fun place to shoot.
So I take it your budget wasn't extensive, no large budget.
We worked on a tiny budget, but that's what gives you, that's the freedom of shooting. You get a lot of freedom from working on a tiny budget, so it has a lot of spirit to it. Yeah.
One of the aspects of your film that I like is the relationship between Simon, the main character, and his best friend, whose name I can't remember.
Knud.
Yes.
Knud.
Yes, Knud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obscure Danish name.
I thought it was very honest, their relationship as friends, because you don't see a lot of films where the relationship seems real. They sort of have this bromance thing happening, but it's so vague and so open. But yours was very specific in that I really felt that these were two young men who knew each other for a while.
Thanks. I mean, the actors didn't know each other before the shoot. I mean, of course, in the casting process, and then afterwards, we emphasized on building that relationship and making that real. And of course, the whole film depends on the truthfulness of the relationship between not only these two characters, but of course all the friends and love interest in general. So I mean, I spent a long time with Chris and Elliot, who plays, and they just really liked each other, and so we just used as much of that and put it into the film. Yeah. Yeah.
In your film, the parents are talked about, but they're absent. Jesus. Fernando, in your film, Jesus, the father, we really understand the pain that he's going through. He's trying his best. He's got a job that takes him away from his son, but he's always trying to, do the best for his son, and he loves his son. You said you don't do a lot of rehearsals, but how did you connect the actor playing Jesus and the father?
The Alejandro Goich is the actor who plays as the father of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And we worked together before in my previous film. So we have a really deep connection. And he worked with me since the beginning when I was developing the character. So when I found Nicolas, my method was that the actors work together with me. We discuss about how we see the characters, how they work, how they feel, how they walk, how they smoke, drink, everything. We discuss about everything. So since the beginning, I felt that they had a really organic connection between them. So it was really easy to work with them, So I think they built a really real relation, and I can see it in the film. So it was a collaborative process.
Yeah. What I enjoyed about both your films is the honesty about male identity, how men sometimes act. And I think you were very faithful in getting that out to the audience.
Thank you.
Any last words? Anything you want to share with audiences who might want to go and see your film at TIFF?
Well,
They're going to ask you things at the Q&A. Be prepared.
Well, I mean, just go with it, drift with the characters, and enjoy the ride.
I just want to invite for the last screening of Jesus, the 16. I don't remember the hour, but the people could check in the guide. So I hope they enjoy the film. I was really impressed about the feedback of the people. It was really, really nice, and the Q&A also were really, really interesting and deep.
And you've had a public screening already, haven't you?
We'd had 2 public screenings already, and it was such a joy. And it's always so interesting to be at the Q&As, because all these questions and reflections upon the story and everything. I don't know, that's where you want to be as a director, to see the audience and talk with the audience and experience how their experience was.
Thank you so much for joining me here and for talking about your films.
Thank you. Great.
So Rasmus Heisterberg's film is called In the Blood, and Fernando Guzzoni's film is called Jesus. I've been saying Jesus. Is it Jesus?
Jesus.
Jesus? Okay, Jesus. So www.tiff.net for all the information about the films that I've been talking about. Today, Lion, you met the composers, Hauschka and Dustin O'Halloran, and Jesus, and In the Blood. TIFF.net. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thanks to Eric for my technical support. And go out and enjoy the festival. There's lots of things happening, even free on Festival Street between University and Peter Street downtown. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.